Hello, Grace here, Bikeodonia High Volt Spares, coming to you from Northern Thailand to talk about the KLX230. So first of all, I'm going to do a short review of this bike to help you understand if the KLX230 is the bike that you need and want. And then I'm going to talk a bit about the modifications which I make to this bike to make it perform the way I like it. So first of all, this is a 2021 KLX230 Dual Sport standard model. Now, dual sport meaning we have our lights, we have our indicators, we have our papers. This bike is fully road legal, but it's also a really capable off-road bike. Now, if you're in the dual sport space and you're looking at the KLX230, you may also be considering the KLX230S model, which is the low seat height version of this bike. Now, the way they achieve the low seat height is by shorter travel suspension. Now, there are some serious drawbacks to shorter travel suspension. It's not going to be as plush, it's going to bottom out a lot more easily. It's just not going to perform as well, particularly off-road. And you're also going to notice you're going to lose a lot of clearance here under the skid plate. So again, for off-road, that's going to make a big difference if you want to hop over logs and things like that. So generally, I would not recommend the KLX230S model unless you're under 5'4", or you have a really short inseam, or maybe if you're a total beginner and you want that extra confidence of being able to get more of your foot down. Now, before you do buy a 230S just for the lower seat height, I would say go to your local dealer or find a friend with a standard model and sit on the bike first and see how you feel. Because one of the interesting things with this KLX230 is that it's got a really skinny seat, skinny fuel tank, skinny seat. And this means it's much easier to get your foot down than on a bike with a wider fuel tank and a wider seat. So even though it may not be the lowest seat height, consider also that it's a skinny bike, and so you're going to actually have a lot easier time touching the ground. I am just under 5'5", and this standard height bike suits me perfectly. So moving right along, we have still more models of the KLX230. There's the SM, the KLX230 SM, which is the motard version. So obviously you're running motard suspension, upside down forks, and your motard rims on that bike, which is purely for on-road. Do not buy the SM version for off-road usage. You will be very disappointed. And then after that, we have the KLX230R and the KLX230RS, which are the purely off-road versions of this bike. So the KLX230R and the RS, they are slightly lighter. The R model is significantly taller, and again, you have that really long travel suspension, which is a real benefit, but some people do find that the R model is a bit too tall for them. And in that case, you have two options. You have the RS, which is the low seat height version of the R model, or you could consider switching back to the dual sport model like the standard here and stripping off any of that extra weight that you don't need if what you're after really is a dirt bike. So those are our choices. We've got the SM, the S, the standard, the R, and the RS. There's a final model available in Asia, and I don't know if it's also available in the States or if it's simply the ABS or non-ABS variant. So in Asia we get the SE model, and the SE model is similar to the dual sport, but it has upside down forks and ABS. Now, you can get the dual sport model in the States with the ABS, and I believe you can also get it without the ABS. So also keep an eye on that possible variation. For off-road, I would not recommend ABS, although I understand that the 24-25 models do have the ability to switch the ABS off, which is a really important consideration. For off-road, you will notice as well that the standard model here, and the same goes for the S model, they have conventional forks. So not the upside down forks that you're going to see on, say, the motard model or the SE model. Now for off-road, I actually really like these conventional forks. They're really basic technology. They're often looked down upon, but I think you'll find that when you ride off-road, these are actually not such bad setup out of the box. Now, a lot of people who, you know, if you're weighing over, say, 75 kilos, you may find, and you're riding quite hard, you may find that your front forks are going to bottom out a little bit with these conventional forks. And that's something that we can fix. I have a kit for that, but I'll talk more about that later. But that's basically the summary. So we have the different models available. Make sure you choose the model which is going to suit you best for your requirements. Now, to talk in more general terms about whether the KLX230 is the bike that you need and want, I think there's different arguments for different sub-models, right? So for the KLX230R, for example, I think it's a nice, cheap dirt bike. It is really fun, it's really capable, and it's not that expensive. It's a great bike to do your drills, do your training, and really work your way up, work on your skills. And it's a great way to get into dirt biking with, you know, a reasonably capable machine if you don't have the budget at the moment for, say, a KTM or a Husqvarna or one of those top-end bikes. Now, in terms of dual sporting, or if you want to have a bike that's road legal as well, then you're looking, I think what you need to think about is, what do you want your main usage to be? What's your priority? Because if your priority is off-road performance, then I would say get a KLX230 because they're quite light, they're nimble, they have a short wheelbase, and the suspension out of the box is actually pretty decent off-road. If you want a trail bike, if you want to do some light enduro, you want to go and explore and you want a really solid bike, but one that's also road registered, this is an awesome choice. However, if a big part of what you're doing is going to be sitting on the highway to get from A to B, or it's going to be a reasonably high speed commuter for you, then you're going to notice the limitations of the 230 engine. So this is a single cylinder air-cooled engine. It's putting out, depending on which generation you get, whether you get 21 to 22 or you get the 23 or you get the 24 to 25. So we've got 3 generations of the KLX230. There's a little bit of variant in how much horsepower you're going to get, you know, straight out of the showroom. We're looking at between, say, like 15 to 19, nothing too wild. Now, I think the power to weight ratio is a much more important consideration, especially on a dirt bike, than actual horsepower. And again, that's why if you are dirt focused, if what you care about is performance off-road and you don't really care so much about top speed on-road, if you have a bit of patience, then I think this is the preferable bike because it's so much lighter than other dual sports in its class. So the main bike that I would compare it to is, I would compare it to, say, a CRF300L, which is, again, a great dual sport. It's a really solid platform. You can do a lot with it. But for off-road, I find the 300L, the CRF300L, to be really significantly heavier than this bike. And I find the weight distribution to be less convenient on the CRF300L. So for off-road, any time of the day, and twice on Sundays, I would be going for the KLX. But like I was saying, if you need to spend time on the highway, or if you even want to do like a little bit of cross-country touring on your bike, then this is not the bike for that. You get on the highway and you can do maybe 55 miles per hour on this bike, and that's fine. But if you want to go a bit faster than that, it's not designed for it. It's not a top speed bike. So keep that in mind. If you want to cross country, if you want to go touring, if you want to, you know, be able to overtake anything on a highway, then I'm going to suggest that the dual sport would be more like the CRF300 than the KLX230. So, I mean, the CRF300, a lot heavier, a lot more top heavy. It's liquid cooled. You've got that radiator. You know, these things, they all make a difference, and just a bigger engine. It's just a heavier bike. This bike, short wheelbase, no radiator to damage, no radiator for extra weight, really lightweight, really simple. This is a better dirt bike. The CRF300 is a better dual sport. So keep that in mind. Another factor obviously is going to be what's available in your market. I know, for example, that the KLX230 is being released in India, which is really exciting. And in certain markets like that, having a CRF 300 is not an option. Also, this bike, it comes from Indonesia. The KLX230 is made in Indonesia, and one thing you'll notice if you ride in Indonesia, which I've had the pleasure of doing, is that the traffic is not going to go fast anyway. So having a maximum, comfortable speed of say 55 or 60 miles per hour in Indonesia, that's way faster than you probably ever need to go anyway. So you got to think about a bike in context. If you're in the American market, you're going to want to be really focused on off-road performance to choose the KLX230, or you're going to want to have a road legal trail bike, as opposed to, getting on the highway. All right, so I think I've covered that. Now, this bike is my bike. This is a first generation 2021 KLX230, and I use it here in Thailand for almost entirely off-road. And I did want a road legal bike because we do spend time, on roads which are public, or we ride through villages, or, I ride in and out of town when I need to. But this is primarily an off-road machine for me. And so a lot of the modifications that I'm going to talk through now are specifically focused for off-road use, which I think is where this bike comes into its own. However, there are other modifications which are going to be universally applicable. For example, if you're in India and you want a dual sport or a commuter, some of these modifications are going to be super useful for you as well. So let me walk you through where we're at with modifications on this bike. First, let's start in the front then. So you'll probably notice I've got the K100% stickers on my front fork. That's because I've upgraded my front fork. So K100%, that's my technical partners with High Volt Spares, and we've developed a fork kit to adjustably stiffen up those front forks. Now, if you're riding off-road, you're riding kind of hard, kind of fast, you're hitting things pretty fast, or if you're a little bit on the heavier side, you'll probably notice that the stock suspension is possibly going to bottom out sometimes, and so you're going to want to stiffen that up. Now, we don't recommend just using conventional stiffer springs. That's going to give you a pogo stick effect. We don't want to be bouncing into the bushes again. So what we do is we have a kit which effectively is a really basic revalving mechanism, and so you can select basically how big do you want the hole for the oil to travel through to be. And so with our kit, you get the boots to adjust your compression and your compression and your rebound. And then you also get adjustable preload, which is really convenient up the top as well. So adjustable preload, adjustable compression, rebound. You have 4 different settings, so you can also experiment to see exactly where you want that to be. I do recommend this modification, like I say, if you're a bit on the heavier side or you're having a problem with bottoming out. But when you buy the new bike, by all means, ride it first and see if this is a problem for you. So apart from that, I always swap out my handlebars. So we're running Renthal Twin Wall 996 here. The stock handlebars on all models of the KLX230, they are not strong. And that may not be an issue if, for example, you're running the SM version, you're completely on road, you're not trying to drop that bike, that's fine. But if you're dual sporting or you're riding off-road, you're going to want something a bit more robust for your handlebars so that you're not always riding home with bent bars at the end of the day. On top of that, we put on these wraparound hand guards because you want to protect your levers and you want to protect your hands. I have particular brackets here which mount these hand guards on the inner end, not to the handlebars themselves, but to your triple clamps. So effectively, this handguard is creating a really, really strong triangle between the end of your bars and your triple clamps. And again, if you're dropping the bike or it falls off a cliff, these things happen. You're not going to come home with bent bars. It's going to be completely fine. So I recommend this as a modification which is going to save your headache later. You can wait until you bend your bars and then replace them, or you can just replace them now and not have to worry about it when you're out on the trail. So Moving right along, what else have we got? I mounted spotlights in the front there. This is I also mentioned this is a 2021 first generation model. So 2021, 2022, they made the KLX230 with this huge halogen headlight, which was not bright, and the headlight mask was just enormous. It weighed a ton. And so as you can see, I've actually removed that front headlight mask. I've got a lightweight LED there instead. Now, I sell this lightweight LED, but you need to be aware that it's not going to fit on the earlier models along with your instrument console, with your speedo. You're not going to be able to run them together because of the placement of the ignition. So this is a modification which is going to be more suitable if you want to ride off-road, or if you live in a jurisdiction like I do where people don't really check if you have a speedometer at all. So if you don't want to get stuck with that ugly heavy halogen headlight mount, I would simply suggest buying the 2023 and up models, because those versions, they come stock with a much more compact LED headlight. So that's something to know when you're choosing your bike as well. I have a few simple modifications up the front, like I have my phone holder, which is Peak Design, which is really tough, really resilient. It's got the vibration damper so that you don't kill the optical image stabilization in your phone. So highly recommend that, but it's not a necessity. I run a basic USB charger so that I can charge my phone when I'm using it for navigation. For off-road, I just use Osmand, and I plug my GPX tracks into Osmand. Super easy, free, you don't have to pay a thing, except just take your old phone and get some Wi-Fi to download your maps beforehand. So, coming to the body of the bike, we have the skid plate, which I think is absolutely essential. Even if you're not riding off-road, rocks and other debris on the road can get flipped up into your engine. Cracked engine cases, very expensive. Skid plates, not so expensive. I would highly recommend. But as a basic starting point, if you're going to ride off-road at all, I would not ride the bike off-road at all without a skid plate. Definitely get something really robust. So this is a robust aluminium skid plate from High Volt Spares, and it will protect your engine case. Now, I also sell skid plates which extend longer, which I actually do recommend. I don't have it on this bike, but it's a little bit heavier than the smaller skid plate, obviously, but it has a tongue here which comes right under your linkage, under your shock linkage, and protects your linkage. So I would highly recommend that as well. And then we just have, we have a bunch of things that we can't see here. So I always do the pair valve delete, and the reason I do that is because I run this full exhaust. So this aftermarket exhaust system, this is full titanium, so it's super light. It's half the weight of the stock exhaust system, maybe less, and so light, and it's also an open exhaust system with the expansion chamber here as well. And what that does is it enhances your airflow significantly. So more oxygen is letting your engine breathe a bit better, and it's increasing your potential to make power. Now, you can run these exhausts without any kind of remapping of your ECU, but if you decide to add a velocity stack as well, then you need to remap with an ECU. So the problem with the remapping ECUs on the Kawasaki KLX230 is that Kawasaki, in their wisdom, have decided to lock down the ECUs on these bikes. So you cannot reflash them unless you have the dealer equipment. So if you do decide to not only run the aftermarket exhaust, but also run the velocity stack, which is going to, again, increase your airflow even more, then you're going to need to get an aftermarket ECU like the Full Stand Next, so that you can reprogram in order to make sure your bike doesn't end up running too lean. But like I say, if you just want to get the full system exhaust, then you do not need to remap with only the full system exhaust modification. Now, this is a really important part of this bike. see this little idle screw. This is a manual idle adjustment screw. Now, the KLX230 comes with this feature where it has an automatically adjusting idle. The idea, I believe, was that it was supposed to make it really hard to stall the bike, so make it really beginner friendly. So if your revs are dropping too much, the ECU is supposed to step in, raise your revs back up. Now, unfortunately, what this means is when you're going down a hill and you want to have engine braking and your revs are dropping low, 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 then the ECU steps in and it raises your idle up instead. And so that means you may actually have acceleration, you may have throttle effectively as you're going downhill when you really want engine braking. It's quite disconcerting. I do not love it at all. It was the very first thing I changed on this bike. When I first got this bike, I rode it without the manual idle screw. I hated it so much. I thought I've made a terrible mistake. I need to sell this bike again, because going downhill, I thought this is annoying. It's almost dangerous, and you know, it's just not what I want to be doing with my life for the next 4 years. So I was very close to selling this bike on that basis until I discovered the manual idle screw, which fixes the whole problem. So manual idle screws so that you can manually adjust your idle to exactly where you need it. Highly recommend it. Now, some people who don't ride a lot of technical off-road will not have so much, they're not going to notice so much how annoying that idle is as you try to get your engine braking going downhill. But if you're going to ride, you know, any kind of enduro or anything like that, or you live somewhere really steep, I would definitely suggest you want to make this modification. Now, clutch. I have an aftermarket clutch kit in this bike. My original clutch did not really enjoy the enduro lifestyle. It did not last very long at all, only a few 100 kilometers. I've since upgraded the clutch. I have a full aftermarket clutch pack, which is friction plates and steel plates. It's a thicker, heavier clutch pack than the original, and I run that with heavier springs as well. And then on top I run this, which is a longer clutch actuator lever, because otherwise it's going to feel really heavy. The lever is going to feel really heavy at the lever when you're trying to pull that clutch in. So I run this longer clutch actuator lever here, give me better leverage and make it feel lighter at the handlebars. If you're doing enduro off-road, I do highly recommend this aftermarket clutch upgrade. These are my Footpegs. These are high volt Footpegs and I love them so much. They are slightly about half a centimeter further back than stock, which is really good for wheelies and getting your front end up over obstacles. They're also much wider, and that makes them way more comfortable. You know, if you're riding standing up all day, you want to have a really wide, comfortable perch for your foot there so that you're not slipping off the pegs and getting too tired. They also have an enduro grip, so they're designed to be used with MX boots or enduro boots. They're definitely not designed to be ridden with flip-flops because they are spiky as hell. So the benefit of that is when you're riding through a river crossing and it's really slippery and you really don't want your feet to slip off the pegs, they're not going to. So this is one of my favorite modifications. What else? We have the plastic frame protection just to stop you from rubbing the coating off your frame too much with your boots here. And then I have this shield here, which is actually my makeshift attempt to address a problem with the 2021, 2022, 2023 editions of the dualsport model. They have an exposed brake line that runs down here. So normally on these models you have the pillion peg here and your rear brake reservoir, the brake fluid reservoir, is attached to your pillion peg. So one of the first things I do obviously is I pull off those pillion pegs because they're really heavy and I don't carry a passenger. And then in order to reattached your rear brake reservoir, you need a little bracket. I sell that bracket, the rear brake reservoir bracket. But you still have a problem that behind here, your rear brake line is really exposed. Now, the way to fix this properly is you want the rear brake, you want the master cylinder that they use on the R models. So the R models have always had the master cylinder, which doesn't have like a separate reservoir, and so it doesn't have that exposed brake line. So that's always been the case on the R models, and now it's the case on the dualsport models from the new one they introduced in 2024-25. So the one with the updated chassis, that's also got the updated brake system, which doesn't have the vulnerability of the exposed rear brake line. So if you have that newer model, you do not need to buy the reservoir bracket because you don't have anything that you need to attach where the pillion peg used to be. If you have the older model like mine, you are going to have this exposed rear brake line. And the fix that I would recommend for that is actually aftermarket retrofitting the R model's brake system. So you just want to get the master cylinder for the KLX230R, and you want to replace your master cylinder here. Highly recommend, because then when you're riding through the forest and the branch reaches out, it doesn't rip out your brake line, and then you get to ride home with brakes instead of without them. I have had considerable practice riding home without any brakes, at least on the back. Yeah, so moving right along, on this bike I run the Aftermarket shock from High Volt, so you can see it's not the regular color, and it has we've got a hard and soft adjustment here. But actually with this shock, what we do is when you order this shock, we ask you to provide us information about the model, the year, and we want to know about rider weight, and we want to know about the kind of riding that you do. So tell me how much you weigh, and then tell me, you know, what kind of riding. Are you riding slow technical stuff and you want like a plush setup? Are you running with luggage, which is going to increase the weight on your rear shock? You know, that sort of thing. So anything that's going to affect the setup for your rear shock, we need to know about it. Tell us your weight, tell us about your luggage, tell us about your gear, and tell us about whether you're doing slow technical or you're like riding fast, open stuff, cross country, you're hitting jumps, you're hitting whoops, that sort of thing. That's what we need to know, because then even though you have the hard and soft adjustment here, which you can adjust on the fly, we're actually going to set up your shock exactly to your rider weight. All right, what's next? I run this really basic, simple rear rack. It's enough to strap an overnight bag, or, you know, enough to travel for a couple of weeks actually. I often take this bike for our tours through northern Laos, and we'll be gone for a couple of weeks at a time. You don't need that much stuff, at least in the warmer climates, and so this little luggage rack is where it's at. All right, and then we have the tail tidy. So the bike stock comes with a big ugly plastic fender, which is really easy to break off. And so if you don't want to break off your fender and lose your number plate in the bushes, I suggest the compact tail tidy, which we use. So tail tidy has integrated indicators with the LED tail light. In your jurisdiction, you may need to have separate indicators as well anyway. Check what the requirements are. But yeah, this has integrated LED indicators, tail light, brake light, and the mounting plate for your number plate. Now I'm going to turn the bike around and I'm going to show you a few things on the other side. This I highly recommend. You can hardly see it, but there is a really long shaft which is connecting your gear shifter to the shifter lever. This long shaft goes into your engine, it's exposed. What happens if you drop the bike on the side, you get a nice little rock in the wrong place, it can shove that shaft right inside your engine cases and damage your shift mechanism internally. In order to fix that problem, you have to split the cases, which is a massive pain. It's much better not to have that problem, and the way I fix that is I have a sort of a sleeve which goes over that shifter rod, And you simply take off your gear shift lever and you slide that sleeve onto the rod and put your lever back on. And as you may be able to see, my gear shifter lever on this bike is completely pretzeled. I completely turned it into a pretzel by smacking it into a really big rock beside a river one day. And it's done absolutely no damage to the internal shift mechanism. So highly recommend. It's a simple modification, but it will save you many a headache. So gear shifter shaft saver, highly recommend. So one of the things that I didn't talk about yet was the pair valve delete, or the EGR delete. Basically this deletes a small part of your emissions control system. You don't need it, it's a weight saving, but also this is going to get rid of the popping sound on deceleration that you'll notice if you use an aftermarket exhaust. So we supply a kit for it. It's got a block off plate, it's got 2 sensor block off plugs as well. Now the second sensor block off plug is going to go on the sensor for the charcoal canister. If your bike comes from, for example, Thailand or California, it's going to have a charcoal evaporative canister, which is about this big. It's a little cylinder. You'll find it up there, just under your fuel tank, and you can just get rid of that, throw it in the bin. Make sure that you block off your sensors with those block off plugs provided, because otherwise you'll have a check engine light. If you don't have a charcoal canister, then don't worry, you're just going to have a spare sensor block off plug. Then it's nothing to be concerned about. Now that's most of the modifications I've made. I've also changed my gearing because I ride this bike mostly for enduro. We do enduro tours all the way across Laos and Thailand, so you know, some days it's quite gnarly. So to cater to that, we've reduce the number of teeth on the front, and I've increased the number of teeth on the back. So I'm running a 13 on the front and I'm running a 48 tooth on the back. So that's giving me more torque down low. It's sacrificing a bit of top speed. Now similarly, if you want to go the other way and you want more top speed but you're not so worried about torque, you can put a smaller rear sprocket on the back. For example, we have a 40 tooth rear sprocket in stock as well, which is quite popular for people running, say, a motard setup. You also have the option of your rear sprocket. It can be aluminium or it can be steel. Steel's going to last longer, it's a lot heavier. Aluminium, super light, not going to last as long. So just decide what your priorities are for that. And yeah, there are many options. Now the final modification I've made on this bike is on the rear. I've got the tubeless tire system, which runs a 100 psi little tube around to seal your rim. And then in the outer chamber you can run as low as 0 psi. I usually run about 4 psi on the rear. It gives incredible grip off-road. This isn't recommended or rated for road use, so just keep that in mind depending on the kind of use you prefer for your bike. The good thing about tubeless, it's not just the incredible grip you get, but it's also lighter. So there are many ways that I've lightened up this bike from the way that I got it, but generally I also find that the weight distribution is very good. It's very manageable and it's got a nice short wheelbase, so it makes it very nimble. So I really enjoyed this bike. I highly recommend it if you want a dual sport, which is going to be mostly for off-road. So in summary, this is a great little bike. I really enjoy it. It's really a great platform. It's low maintenance. It's so hard to break. Doesn't even have a radiator to destroy. And you know, there are times when I ride this bike for 2-3 weeks every single day because we're running tours, and those are off-road tours. It's working hard, and I do not have to do much to this bike at all to keep it in great working order. It's just a really solid platform. So single cylinder, air-cooled, simple bike, great weight distribution, short wheelbase, not too heavy. Really, I enjoy this bike a lot, and I think that if you particularly enjoy your off-road, then this bike is a really versatile place to start. So I will catch you later. If you're looking for any more information, contact us at highvoltspares.com, or you can browse our store on the website of the same name. Feel free to drop me a line anytime. I love talking about motorbikes. All right, I'll catch you later. So the last thing I want to say about this bike is that it's simple and reliable. So air-cooled, single cylinder, no radiator to break. It's hard to break, it's easy to fix, and it's just reliable. So we run long tours, and sometimes during the high season I'll be riding this bike every day for 2 or 3 weeks. And there's very little I need to do to this bike to keep it running and in good order for day after day of reasonably gnarly stuff. So, you know, this bike, it's got my back. I have a lot of confidence in it. I enjoy it a lot. I think it's a really good dual sport if your focus is mainly off-road. If you want something nimble and light with a nice short wheelbase, this is a good choice.